Shalissa? 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 Shalissa!
Oh, hey, Greg. What's going on?
It's my Bible. It's doing it again.
You mean convicting you of sin and inspiring you to change your ways?
Well, no. Well, yes, but that's not the problem.
So then what's the problem?
The words. They're upside down again.
They are?
Yeah, big time. Check out what Jesus says right here.
It says, if someone asks you to carry their bag a mile, you go 2 miles.
Keep going.
And if someone strikes you on one cheek, you let him strike the other cheek.
It's insane, right? I mean, Jesus can't possibly mean that.
But he does, Gregory.
He what?
Jesus wants us to be peacemakers. He wants us to love those who hate us and curse us.
Why would we do that?
Think about it, Greg. If some guy walks up to you and shoves you to the ground, and you shove him back, what do you look like?
A mess after he gets up and beats me up some more.
Funny. But, no, you look like everyone else. The world says we're supposed to take revenge when someone hurts us. But if we show love to those who hurt us...
We stand out.
Exactly.
We look more like Jesus, who loved everyone, even those who cursed him.
It's a little upside down, I know.
Oh, it's totally upside down. But it also totally makes sense. Thanks, Shalissa.
No problem. Anytime, man.
All right. There we go. So there's a little clue about what we're talking today. And now, so I'm going to save our worship time till the end, our song till the end, and I'm going to invite Mr. John up so he can share with all of you. So let's welcome Mr. John.
Well, thank you for that. Let me just get this thing started here. Bingo. Okay, great. Well, this is great, guys. You've probably seen me sitting at the back not doing a whole lot for the last little while, and I'm really, really happy to be up here today. So, I thought maybe, since you don't know me very well, I should tell you a little bit about myself. Like Teresa says, my name's John, but Mr. John sounds good. I worked with the grade 1 class a couple of years ago now, and they all called him Mr. John, and that sounded pretty good, so that's great. I live in a place called Corunna. Probably most of you guys know where Corunna is. And I live with my wife. Her name's Rose. And I have 2 children who aren't really children anymore. Both of them are married. My son and his wife live about 5-minute walk from where I live in Corunna. And my daughter and her husband, they only got married about 3 months ago, and they live all the way down in the United States, about 8 hours away. So we're split up a little bit as a family. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, I'll say the most important one. I have a granddaughter who is 15 months old. She turned 15 months old yesterday. So her name is Willa. So I asked Jesus into my heart when I was a little older than you guys, but when I was 22. And I started going to a church in Hamilton called West Highland. And back then, West Highland, they called it Sunday school. And the man who ran Sunday school heard that I had been a cub leader before I became a Christian. And so he came up to me one day and says, how'd you like to work in our Sunday school? I said, I'll try it for a while, see if I like it. Well, so I started working in my Sunday school. I started working in the Sunday school at West Highland then. And I stopped working in the Sunday school at West Highland about 1.5 years ago when we moved to Corunna. So I got stuck there. I think they say I get stuck there, but I got there and really liked it there. And our Sunday school changed a little bit. I love wearing my KidJAM shirt. Teresa gave me my KidJAM shirt, and I felt like I was really proud. Well, at West Highland, where I was having my own church, very similar in color, we wore something called a Star Kids shirt. So if I refer to this group as Star Kids, you'll know why, because my brain is going back to Hamilton. But just like KidJAM, Star Kids was all about teaching kids about your age about Jesus. And you know what, next time I go back to Hamilton, I'm taking the shirt back to West Highland because I'm sure they got somebody out there who can probably use it. Okay, my favorite sports teams, that's important. My favorite sports teams are, of course, does anybody know where Hamilton is, by the way? I should ask you that. Has anybody ever been to Hamilton? Why did you go to Hamilton?
When we went to Disney World.
No. We went there to go see someone we know who lives there.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, Hamilton is way over here on the tip of Lake Ontario, just like Sarnia is kind of down in the bottom tip of Lake Huron. And it takes about 2 hours to go from here to here. So I'm not too far away from where I grew up, because like I said, I did my whole life in Hamilton, right up until about a little over a year ago. And so therefore, because I lived in Hamilton, can you guess who my favorite sports team is? Anybody want to take a shot? What if I said Oski Wee Wee? Would that help? And my favorite, what do you think?
Soccer?
Which?
Soccer?
No, my favorite team is the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Always has been. When I was your age, there was no other teams around, and everything was about the Tiger Cats. And my other favorite team is the Toronto Blue Jays. Love baseball. Now I know in this church, you can get in trouble if you don't mention another sport. So I do like basketball. I played a little basketball when I was younger, not a lot, but a little bit. And when I was a boy, my favorite team was called the Boston Celtics. But now, of course, it's the Toronto Raptors. So, something you should know about me, I like to ask questions. Because I like to, I don't want to stand up here and talk all day. I like to hear what's going on with you guys. So, I like to ask questions, and some of the questions I ask, there's only one right answer. Like if I said, who was Jesus' mom? Well, I'm afraid there's only one right answer to that question, and that is, of course, Mary, right? Yes, Mary was Jesus' mom. But what if I asked you, how do you think Mary felt to be a girl, somewhere right around Rachel's age, back there, going to this strange place to have a baby? How do you think she felt? Well then, some of you may say, well, she felt happy because God had come to her and said her baby was going to be the Son of God, and you'd be right. And someone else may say, I think she was scared to death because her mom was a long way away and she knew no one and there was nobody around but men, and she was just scared to death. And you'd be right. So that's the kind of questions I like to ask, the kind that make you think, because I want to know what you guys are thinking. When, I don't want you just to listen here and go home and say it's this way because Mr. John said it was that way. Now, so, having said that, anybody got any questions for me so far? Or it's a little early, I wouldn't pick on you and make you ask them. You know what? One of the questions sometimes a person asks me, because they know they go to church, they'll say, you got a favorite Bible verse? And that's always a hard one, because I guess I should have a favorite Bible verse. But I got a few I like. And I find that the Bible is kind of the thing that is going to help you out when you need it. And so therefore, your favorite Bible verse will be the one that maybe you can call on that helps you out when you need it the most. I look at the back here at all these jigsaw pieces, and there's some great verses here. But I want to tell you about one verse in the Old Testament that I really, really, really like. Probably is one of my favorite verses. It's found in the book of Samuel. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background on this real quick. Samuel was one of God's main men. When God needed something done, he went to Samuel. And one day, the Israelites, they had their first king, and his name was Saul. And Saul, like most kings, started out pretty good, trying to do his job, but as he went on, he started realizing, hey, when you're a king, it's pretty special, and people treat you special, so I must be special. And Saul got to the point where he wasn't worrying about the people anymore at all, he was just worrying about himself. God looked down and said, hey, you know what, time for a new king. And he said, Samuel, I got a job for you to do. I want you to pick a new king. And he says, are you crazy? I don't think he said crazy to God, but he said, but God, if it works out that I'm looking for a new king, I'm a dead man. Saul will kill me. He says, don't worry, I got it all, it's all covered. You're going to go to a place called Bethlehem, which, of course, we'd all hear about a little bit later, and you're going to find a guy named Jesse. And this Jesse, he's got a lot of sons. And the next king that I come from is going to be, the next king of Israel is going to be one of Jesse's sons. So off Samuel went, found Jesse, Jesse brought out all his sons. And Samuel said, okay, I guess it's my job to pick one now. And he came up to his first son. And the first son's name was a guy named Eliab. And Eliab was like the most amazing person anybody had ever seen. He was probably as tall as me, maybe even taller, only his arms didn't hang out like little branches on a tree. He had huge muscles, he had long hair, he was handsome, and Samuel must have just stood there with his mouth open, like that, looking. You can't see, but my mouth's open right now. And he said, surely this one is the God anointed. And then God came back to Samuel, and he said what's become one of my favorite verses. This guy's name was, the first son's name was Eliab, by the way. I'll stand over here so you can see it. He said to Samuel, don't look at how handsome Eliab is. Don't look how tall he is. I have not chosen him. He says, God does not see people the same way, God does not see the same way people see. People look at the outside of a person, but God looks at the heart. And I just think that's about one of the best verses you could ever have, because it's true, you know. My little friend down there with the snowman, what's your name again? I met you.
Grayson.
Gracie. You know, now there's Grayson. Grayson's probably about 3'8" right now. Grayson will probably end up being taller than I am. But right now he's about 3 feet, little guy. You go to Grayson, well, he's a cute kid, but you know, that's about it. He can't, you know, surely a kid that small, or like you, any of them, small little kids, surely a short, small kid can't do much for God. And I am so glad that God says, no, that's not the case, because it's whatever in here is that what's important to God. And, you know, you can have kids in grade 3 who are doing mighty things for God, and rich men who run corporations who are doing absolutely nothing for God. So that's just something that I always ask my Sunday school kids to remember. So anyway, we'll get into it. Last week, like you guys, some of you guys, I started watching KidJAM online. I wanted to kind of get the whole feel for the series. And Teresa came on, and I started to worry. I thought, uh-oh, how much money am I going to have to spend to get my television set fixed? Because something is very strange here. Can anybody tell me what was wrong with what I thought was wrong? Yeah, Micah. She was upside down, and just about the time I was starting to go and look on my computer for a TV from her, man, she flipped herself around, which I was really happy. But like we already said, what we're talking about today is Jesus' upside down way of living. Jesus said last week, if you want to be the greatest, you have to be the least. Instead of looking for people to do things for you, you should be looking for things to do for people. And this week we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Here we go. But before we do that, oh yeah, I need my backpack. Ava, would you be so kind? Where's Ava? Oh, would you be so kind as to bring me my backpack, please? Thank you. Oh, thank you. What's wrong? Oh, you're a stronger girl than I am. Thank you. That's great right there. Sorry, I should let you go before I dropped it. Yeah, this Ava did a great job bringing this over. You know how much this weighs? 25 pounds. That's like a big bag of potatoes, or a sort of medium-sized bag of potatoes. It's a heavy food. And I just asked David to bring it over just to kind of go into what I was going to talk about next. Because, oh, by the way, Ava, where are you? Would you be able to take that to my car after church? Oh, and I forgot to mention my car's over at the Lambton Mall. Would you mind? Yeah. She's sitting there going, no way. Don't worry, you know what? If I tried that, Ava's mother's back there, Ava's father's across the hall, keep me in my face saying, carry your own suitcase, man. I'm just kidding. But when Jesus was alive, Israel wasn't a free country. Israel was run by someone, by a big group called the Roman Empire. They were in Israel, in Jerusalem, and all the cities. And when Jesus was born, they were in charge. And when Jesus was a man, they were in charge. So Jesus would have grown up his entire life looking at soldiers like that around Israel, just making sure nobody was getting out of line. People were following all the Roman law. And, these guys were all pretty big guys, and you didn't want to mess with them. And once in a while, their boss, their sergeant, or their general would come out and say, okay, you you've been guarding the east gate, I want you to go guard the west gate. And the west gate was maybe, a good 20-minute walk away. And he would have his bag with all his swords and his equipment and his other shield and everything, a pretty heavy bag. And he wouldn't want to carry it, so he would just go to any Israelite he saw and said, you little girl right there, you're carrying my bag. And if he said, well, actually I was going the other way, too bad. Actually, come on, I'm 10 years old, give me a break. Well, maybe they didn't ask 10-year-olds, but they asked an adult who said, I'm sick. He'd say, too bad, just carry the bag, I don't want to hear anything more about it. And that was kind of the way it was, and the Israelite people did not really like the Romans very much. And the Israelite would do it, but he would hate doing it, and it really made him feel bitter. And I've talked about that because that's going to get mentioned just now in the Bible verses that Rachel and I are going to read together. And so I'll put my watch over there. Now you listen up. This is, has anybody ever heard of a Sermon on the Mount? It's something from the Bible. It's probably one of the most major and one of the most longest sermons that Jesus ever gave. And right around the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, he talked a little bit about what we're going to read today. So I'll start it off. You have heard that it is said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth.
But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also.
And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well.
If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles.
Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you.
You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy.
But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
That you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rachel, for helping me. So, yes?
I learned about this verse at school.
Did you?
Yeah.
Great. That's good. Now, one of the things, it wasn't funny, but one of the things that we read right at the very beginning was, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to have that up for you when we were reading. Well, there's my first mistake. 2 more strikes and I'm gone. Okay. Jesus said, you have heard, so it wasn't anything new. These people would have heard it from somewhere, according to Jesus, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Well, anybody want to take a shot at what you think that might mean? Remember, I don't go, ha, you're wrong, blah, blah. I want to hear, yeah, Micah.
Like if someone does something to you, do it back to them?
Exactly. Someone comes along and gives you a black eye, turn around and you give the other guy a black eye. Or someone hits you in the mouth with a stick and 3 of your teeth can't come out, well, you go after that guy and you knock his tooth out. That's the way that the civilization works. Now, that sounds pretty gruesome, doesn't it? It sounds like a horrible way to live if we had to live like that. Now, so where in the world, Jesus said, you have heard, so Jesus said, these people, or Jesus knew these people had heard this somewhere. Where in the world do you think they hear such a terrible thing? Yeah.
These people made these rules of these bad rules. These people in Bethlehem, I think, they made these rules, these bad rules to make. But then Jesus came up to them and said, and made new rules.
Okay, you're right. People had made rules. And where do you think these rules came from? I'll give you a hint. Whoops. It's too quick a hint. There you go. Now, back then it wasn't the Bible, like we know it, but it was a whole bunch of rules that had been written down way back at, way before the time of Jesus, in the first 3 or 4 books of the Bible, Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. And if you look those verses up, it'll say an eye for an eye. And that was what was called the old Jewish law. And see, the thing about Jesus is when he came along, he changed all of that. So Jesus said, you've heard it said an eye for an eye, but now I'm telling you that's not wrong. Or, you know, and there was a whole bunch of other rules. And that's why the Jewish leaders didn't really think a lot about, think much of Jesus, because he was out there telling that all of the things that they had been teaching for centuries and centuries weren't right anymore. And they weren't, because all of that was before Jesus, and once Jesus came, then we learned about salvation and love and all of the rest of that good stuff. So anyway, how often do you find yourself in a position of not getting along with someone who pushes you, someone who you know, cuts you down, says bad things about you? You know, there used to be a saying when I was young, I don't know if it's still around, sticks and stones may break my bones and names will never hurt me. That's wrong, because, and I don't want to digress too much, but my daughter, the one who lives in New York now, had a whole bunch of friends when she was in grade kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, but then when she started to get to grade 5, she started putting on a little bit of weight, and they didn't. And all these friends just went right like that, and they kind of took her out of this nice little group of friends they had, and they bullied her, and they made her life miserable for a couple of years. I am so glad that we didn't have the internet when she was that age, because at least when she came home, she was safe. But bullying, guys, is just as bad, sometimes even worse, you know, than some of that other, sorry, calling names, I mean, sorry, and bullying that way is just as bad. Don't let anybody tell you it's not. So anyway, you know, the easy thing to do when someone else does something to you is to strike back. That's kind of human nature. That's the way we're made. But if we respond to that person with kindness, with respect, what does that say about us? In the verses we read, that's what Jesus was trying to say we should do. You know, he said something in there about carrying the bag. Someone asked you to carry it a mile, carry it 2 miles. But Jesus, no, I mean, look, just listen to what he's saying. Show that person love, and you will end up looking a lot better than if you throw the bag back at them and say, I'm not carrying this. Especially if it was a Roman soldier, that would not be a healthy thing to do. Some may think this is weak. Some may think, well, boy, you know, you're much stronger than the bully. Why don't you go after him? And it may seem upside down to pay back evil with good, but living upside down is how we show other people the love of Jesus. And it's not easy, trust me, okay? If you think kids are the only ones that struggle with this, you're not. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm the only adult that struggles with it, but it is hard. Every day we meet people that get us mad. And when you start driving, then you really know that's true. But no one has ever convinced another person to follow Jesus by responding to them with cruelty. The only way you're going to get a person to be interested in following Jesus is to respond with kindness and show love towards that person. Pay back evil with good, and then we'll become the light of Christ to anybody who's watching, and even to that person who may have mistreated us. And you know, sometimes it doesn't happen right away, you know, but sometimes it takes after a while. You do start to see people change. Yeah, you got a question? Oh, sorry. Okay. You know what? I'm going to let you know a little secret. Oh, yes. Yes.
Can I go get my water bottle? My mom has it.
Yeah. Are they allowed to go through church by themselves? Okay, yeah. Teresa will go with you.
Can I go?
You know, I'm going to let you in a little secret, especially now Teresa's leaving here. So, when Teresa, you know, Teresa and I talked about me doing a lesson, and so she gave me, the first lesson she gave me was all about giving all you have to the Lord, the widow and the 2 little coins, and she gave all she had, and I thought, oh, I love that, I'm going to do great with that lesson. And then she wrote me an email and said, well, because of the quarantine, because of the shutdown for 2 weeks, you're now doing the next lesson. And I looked at what the lesson was, and I went, oh, that is a hard lesson for me to teach, or it can be, because I am not always, you know, remember I talked about God looks at the heart? Well, sometimes I'm hoping God's not looking at my heart. When I'm driving and a guy cuts me off and then he has the nerve to shake his fist at me after he cuts me off, I'm kind of hoping maybe God's checking out somebody else's heart then, because my heart is not exactly where I think God would have it. But you know what? When that happens, I just have to try to say, you know what? Get over it, move on. But the fact of the matter is, you know, not everybody's going to like everybody else in the world. I mean, that's just not that way. Some people just don't get along with other people. And you learn to live with that, but as long as you continue to show kindness, you know, that's really what God's talking about. You guys are going to be going out in about 2 minutes to we'll break up. When Teresa comes back, we'll break up. But I just got one more thing I wanted to show you. That last verse that Rachel read to us. That's kind of cool. Let me see. What verse is that on? That's on slide number 19. So I just go there. 19. No. Let's try that again. 19. There we go. Let's close now, right here. That was your verse that Rachel read. And you may be children of your Father in heaven. But this last part, I read this last part and I thought, you know what, I've read this 100 times and I've never really thought about what this last part means. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. What does that mean? So I started thinking about it. Anybody here ever been to Myrtle Beach or North Carolina? Well, I'm very fortunate. I've been to Myrtle Beach a couple of times. And this picture is actually taken off the internet. It's a picture of North Myrtle Beach. And it's kind of a cool place to go. And when I went, we actually had a building that was right on the beach. And I could get up early with a cup of coffee and watch the sun rise over the Atlantic Ocean. Now, you guys are lucky here, because after a 10-minute drive and you can see beautiful sunsets on Lake Huron. But this is the sun rising. And I thought, okay, he causes this. Oh, and every morning, there's probably about 30 people who you always see down walking along the beach, and sometimes with their coffees. They went out there to watch the sunrise. And that sun comes up, and everybody enjoys it. And, you know, I don't know if all those people on the beach are all people who love the Lord. Some of them are, I'm sure, and maybe some of them aren't. But yet, God sends that sunrise, and everybody enjoys it, right? And then, likewise, how much fun is it to get caught out in the rain, especially if you're dressed up and going somewhere? Well, all these people got caught out in the rain. It says he sends the rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. So everybody gets wet when it rains. God doesn't, you know, magically give Christians umbrellas when he knows it's going to rain and they don't get wet. And that's the way it is. And that leads us up to what you guys are going to be talking about in your small group when you go up in just a minute. This is our memory verse. And it's a pretty cool verse because sometimes people try to figure God out. God says, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways and my thoughts. So are my ways higher than your ways and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. So God's basically saying, don't stay awake at night trying to figure out, why did I get wet today when it rained? Why would God do that? Because God's saying you're not, there's certain things that we're just not going to understand until, maybe we get to heaven. And that's fine. I don't want to know everything myself. I just kind of take it as it comes. But yeah, that verse that Jesus said kind of said the same thing. Good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen to good people. And, God's ways are higher than our ways. So, Teresa, you want to come and we'll break them up? And I think you're going to be talking about this a little bit more.